Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today, we from group 5 of K05 will be presenting our group project for the subject ECO 099 Introduction to Economics under the title of Demand, Supply and Market Equilibrium. So, firstly, our today's presentation is based on our group project that is under the topic of demand, supply and market equilibrium. So our presentation today is based on 4 questions that has been given before. The first question about the definition of demand and supply, and the second question is about why demand has a negative relationship while supply has a positive relationship, and the third question is about what is the changes in the given situation, in the changes in demand or supply or both, and also what is the changes happen to the equilibrium price and quantity. And the last question is about price control. It's about the definition of the two types of price control and also the advantages and the disadvantages of both of them.
My part, I will explain the definition of demand and supply. So the first one, I will explain what is the definition of demand. So demand is referred to the willingness and ability of consumers to purchase a given quantity of a good or service at a given point in time or over a period in time at a particular price, which means that a person who desire or want to have a product must have the ability to buy and be willing to pay for that product. Next, what is the definition of supply? So the definition of supply refers to the ability and willingness to sell or produce particular goods and service within a given period of time at a particular price.
Moving on to the second question. So the question said, explain why demand has a negative relationship while supply has a positive relationship. So the difference in both of the relationship of supply and demand is based on the relationship between two elements in the law of supply and the law of demand. So first, the demand has a negative relationship because the law of demand stated that the higher the price of a product, the lower the quantity demanded of that product, and vice versa, ceteris paribus. Therefore, both price and quantity demanded have a negative relationship. Meanwhile, in supply has a positive relationship because the law of supply stated that the higher the price of a product, the higher the quantity supplied of that product, and vice versa, ceteris paribus. Therefore, both price and quantity supplied have a positive relationship.
Moving on to the next question, with the aid of diagrams, explain whether there is a change of demand, supply or both. What happened to the equilibrium price and quantity? The first question, due to online distance learning, e-textbook is widely used. What happened to the market of physical textbook? In answering this question, we are going to assume that supply is constant, as shown in the diagram. In the market of physical textbook, the demand curve will shift to the left due to the decrease of quantity demanded for physical textbook. The supply curve, however, will remain constant, assuming that the quantity supplied of physical textbook remains unchanged. As the demand curve shifts to the left, both of the equilibrium price and quantity for the physical textbook will decrease. Next, due to travel restriction during pandemic COVID-19, what happened to the daily flight frequency from Kuala Lumpur to Penang? In answering this question, we are going to assume that demand is constant, as shown in the diagram. The supply for the daily flight from Kuala Lumpur to Penang will decrease and later cause the supply curve to shift to the left. The demand curve, however, will remain unchanged, assuming that the demand for the daily flight from Kuala Lumpur to Penang remains constant. As the supply curve shifted to the left, the equilibrium price of the daily flight from Kuala Lumpur to Penang increased, meanwhile the equilibrium quantity decreased.
The definition of ceiling price or maximum price is a price control set by the government prohibiting the charging of a price higher than a certain level. The aim is to lower prices below market equilibrium. A maximum price is set in the interest of consumers to protect them from paying unreasonably high prices for essential goods and services. The examples for the essential goods are sugar, cooking oil, and petrol. For the definition of floor price can be referred to as the minimum prices. When the price charged is greater than or less than the equilibrium price decided by the market force of demand and supply, this is known as floor price. Government impose regulations that prevent prices from falling below a minimum level set by the government, which can lead to surplus. For example, the minimum price used to boost the profits of food-producing farmers. Next, for the first advantage of the ceiling price is consumers can buy products at a lower price. Since the quantity demanded by the customers is greater than the quantity produced by the suppliers at price below the equilibrium, a maximum price set below the equilibrium results in a shortage or surplus demand. Since the amount supplied reduces as the price falls, certain customers who had the product or service before the maximum price was imposed lose out. For the first advantage of floor price is that producers' income is protected. The government will purchase any surpluses of goods and services besides store any surpluses of goods for future use. By assuming demand for the good is relatively price inelastic, higher price should result in higher income for producers. For example, the practice of fixing floor price is initiated in the agriculture sectors. Price control aims to protect farmers should the price commodities be too low in the free market. For example, the government controls the price of paddy to help the farmers increase their income. The price of paddy is usually fixed at a price which is above the equilibrium price. Second advantage of floor price is higher wage rate. Lower paid workers are better off with a higher wage rate with a floor price which prevents income from falling below a certain level. Another example of government-imposed floor price is to prevent any minimum wage rate whereby the lowest wage is paid to workers by the employers. This practice aims to protect workers from exploitation. The minimum wage rate has the potential to reduce poverty by increasing wage paid to low-skilled labor. In Malaysia, the government recently introduced the minimum wage rate for the rubber industry.
Now I will tell you for disadvantages of these two price control, which is ceiling price and floor price. So for the first disadvantages of ceiling price is emergence of black market. Some producer may take bread from consumers. So for the fixing a ceiling price on consumer goods does, however, it can cause the emergence of black market. First, a ceiling price will create an excessive demand for certain product, and this can lead to black market. When there is a shortage of goods, some transactions take place under the control price system, where other transactions may occur outside this system. These other transactions are classified as transactions in an illegal market or black market. For example, there is an excessively high demand on rice. People will buy them illegally, and in order to secure their own, they will bribe the producer, who accept the bribe as a quick cash. So, for the second disadvantages of ceiling price is the quantity produced reduced. As the ceiling price is below the equilibrium price, producer will not make any profit from supplying certain products at that price. So, producer of the product will reduce production due to the lower price, and this means a reduction in the quantity supplied. In the event of a shortage of the product, some consumer will be willing to pay higher price to get that product. Producer will provide the product for a bribe and may even practice other illegal activities. For example, during the Second World War, the price of goods was fake and well explained. However, this has prompted people to sell it on the black market with a very, very expensive price. So moving on to the disadvantages of low price. So for the first disadvantages of low price is consumer need to pay more price, which higher than the equilibrium price. Therefore, consumer have to pay more for goods and services. For example, many government intervened by establishing price floor to ensure that the farmer make enough money by guarantee a minimum price that the goods can be sold. The second disadvantages of the floor price is waste of resources of production, which is that a surplus will occur when there is a floor price and the government will need to purchase excess supplies of the agricultural commodities such as cocoa, corn, dairy product and others. Sometimes there will be an overflow of these commodities which lead to waste of resources because the government purchase are made with the taxpayers' money. For example, over the short term, producer benefit as they are able to sell their good at a higher price. However, there is a risk that because prices are high, so producer produce too much of goods while consumer cannot afford them. This will lead to a surplus and potentially lose down the road for producer as they can't sell what they have produced.
So that's the end of our presentation of our group project for ECO 099 Introduction to Economics under the topic of Demand, Supply and Market Equilibrium. Thank you and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.